Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about one of the most important hooks in React, the useState hook. useState allows us to manage state in our functional components without having to switch to a class-based component. We will cover the basics of useState and show some practical examples of how to use it. Before we dive into the useState hook, let's first understand what state is in React. State is a data structure that stores information about the component that can change over time. For example, if we have the counter component, the number of counts will change as the user clicks the increment or decrement button. In React, we can use the state to track the changes and update the component accordingly. Now, let's move on to how to use useState. To use the useState hook, we first import it from React like this. Then, we declare state variables and set their initial values like this. The syntax of useState is such that the first element of the array returned by the hook is the current value of the state variable, in this case count, and the second element is a function that lets you update that value, in this case setCount. Here we have a count state variable with an initial value of 0, and we also have a setCount function which we will use to update the count state later. So in line number 6, this statement declares a new count variable and initializes its value to 0, as you can see here. And setCount variable is a function that is used to change the state of count. Let's say you want to change the count variable to 4 or something else. So in that case, you will be using setCount function in order to update the state of count variable. So now we are going to build a counter application which is going to have two buttons. One is the increment button and the other one is the decrement button. As you click on the increment button, the state of the count is going to increase by 1, and when you are going to click the decrement button, the state of the count is going to decrease by 1. So let's build it. So as you can see, we have already imported the useState in the line number 1, and we have already defined the variables count and setCount, right? Okay, now let's go and build the application. So first, I'm going to add one h1 tag which is going to have my count state. After that, I'm going to define two buttons. One is the increment button for increasing the state of count by 1, and the other one is going to be the decrement button. Okay, and let's give the minus sign over here. Now I'll be adding one functionality to the increment button by saying on click and pass a callback function setCount. As we have discussed, the setCount is going to change the state of count, right? setCount. Now in this, I'll be like, whatever the value of count is, count, increase it by 1. That's it. We have the functionality ready for the increment button. Now let's add the similar functionality to the decrement button. On click, pass a callback function again, and set count. Inside of this, pass count minus 1. Now we have it. We have the application ready. Okay. So now let me just explain you what we have built. In line number 9 over here, we added one h1 tag which has the count variable so that we can see what is the present state of count is. What increment button does is, whenever you're going to click the increment button, it is going to call the setCount function, and we are passing count plus 1. That means the present state of my count plus 1, and the same goes for the decrement button. So now let's see how is the application looking. I'll just save it, and here we go. This is the application. Okay. So now, as you can see, on clicking the increment button, the state is increasing by 1, right? And when I click the decrement button, the state goes down by 1. So this is the application what we have built. And the counter example is the simple and best example that I can give you for the useState hook. So now as we have built the counter application, let's move on to another example, which is going to give you a clear understanding of what exactly useState is and how everything works. So we have already imported the useState from React. Now let's just define a state. Const input and set input equals to useState of empty string. Okay, I forgot to tell you what we are building. So basically we are building an input capture application. We are capturing the input, whatever is being typed into the input box. Okay. Now for this, I'll define one input box, okay, which is going to have one placeholder saying write something, right? So great. Okay, we have we have it. So this is the input box, whatever we have. Okay. Now also I want to have an h1 tag, which is going to show me what exactly is inside my input. Great, now I just save it. And as you can see, we have nothing. Now let's see what happens if I type something XYZ inside this. Now, according to the definition, the input should have its state as XYZ. Now let's see, is it reflecting over there or not? Okay, great. As you can see, the XYZ is being reflected over here. Nice. Now for the input box, I'm going to add a functionality saying on change, pass a callback function again. Now let me just explain you what exactly onChange does in this case. So basically, as you can see, now the input box is completely empty. OnChange captures the changes that are being made in the input box. Now if I type A, B, C, D, that means something has changed inside the input box. Whenever something is being changed, it calls that function, whatever is present inside onChange, okay? So in our case, we are having one callback function. So this callback function will be called every single time something changes inside this input box. Now in this callback function, we are going to pass a parameter named as event. Now first, let's console.log this event. Great, I've saved it. Now when I refresh the page, when I change something inside the input box, let's say I'm typing A. Okay, I have got something in the console. Let's open this. Now here, if you look at this clearly, you can see this target, right? Okay, this target means input. That means event.target is corresponding to the input box. Let's try to capture that. Dot target. I'll type A. Great. So that means basically I'm getting the entire HTML of the input box. And if you want to access the content of the input box, you're going to be like event.target.value. That's it. Now when I console.log event.target.value, let's see what the output is going to be. I'll save it and let's refresh the page. I'll write A, B, C, D. Okay, wow, that's great, right? Let's do it again. Now when I type A, I'm getting A. Now when I type B, I'm getting AB. Because now AB is inside my input box. I'll type C. Now ABC string is inside my input box. So now we are able to capture whatever is present inside my input box. Great. So now let's just put the contents of input box inside my input state. We'll do that by using useState, as I have previously explained that to you. I'm going to be like, event.target.value. Great. Initially, let's say my input state is XYZ. Okay, I'll just save it. Okay, this gives me an error. This says, okay, I'm sorry, I said useState, but it's not useState. It's set input, right? Because I want to change the input. And remember one thing, guys, you cannot call any hook inside of the return statement or JSX code. You should always call it at the top of the component or a function. Okay, now let's put this as set input because we want to change the input, right? We want to change the input to event.target.value. So I'll just explain the code to you. So now what's going to happen is the initial state of input is XYZ. So inside the h1 tag, we will be seeing XYZ initially. But whenever I'm going to type something inside the input, this callback function is going to call every single time something changes inside the input. And this callback function is going to set my input to event.target.value. That means whatever is inside my input box is going to be reflected over here in the h1 tag. Now let's see if the application is working fine correctly. I'll save it. Great, we have no errors. So now let me just refresh the page. Great. So now as you can see, initially the input state is XYZ. I'll type A. That's great, right? Because whenever I am typing something inside the input box, the state of my input is being changed, right? I'll type A, B, C, D. It's cool, right? Because whenever I type something over here, the same is reflecting over there. And this entire thing is because of hooks. In this case, it is a useState hook. And if you notice clearly, even if I type anything, even if I type some big string, the page is not reloaded, So this is one of the main benefits of using hooks inside the React. That's it for the video on using the useState hook in React. We covered the basics of useState and gave some practical examples of how to use it, like creating a counter and capturing user input. I hope this was helpful. If you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing the channel for more videos. And thanks for watching.